just Matt is better?
No, it just means he skipped down the last talk. Or the last presentation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, love.
Let's get started. Let's do this. Ready?
All right. Yeah, dude.
Okay, hello.
We're a little underdressed, but
Yeah,
whatever deal.
whatever. So we're Matt Squared. We're going to talk about poker. It's not just gambling.
It's not. All right. So the basic definition of poker. I'm sure you've all heard or played. Actually, how many people have played poker here? Show of hands. How many people have played like more than a little bit? All right, great.
How many people have lost money playing poker?
All right.
There we go. That's what we want to see.
So the definition would be like any card game, like standard 52 card deck, with at least a round of betting and some form of hidden cards where not everyone can see all the cards that are in play. And the goal generally is to make the best hand, whether that's like a high hand, which is like the standard, like pair or two pair all the way up, or a low hand, which is like a little more complicated, or like random stupid games like Badoogie, where the goal is to make the lowest 4 cards of all 4 different suits, stuff like that. Still a poker game, but like not like the typical poker games. So the most popular one by far is Texas Hold'em, right? That's probably what you guys have all played. And that's where you have 2 cards face down, and after so many rounds of betting, there are 5 cards face up that everyone can use, and the goal is to make the best 5-card hand using any combination of the 7 cards you have access to, your 2 and the 5 community cards. So you have, those are your whole cards face down. You have a round, you get dealt your cards, there's a round of betting. 3 cards come up, you call it the flop, then there's a round of betting, and then there's 1 card face up, the turn, round of betting, the river, round of betting, and then showdown. Okay, so when you're sitting at a table, there's a few positions to think about. You have the dealer, who at like a casino or something isn't actually dealing the cards. It's just like a position. It's just a button. And action always goes to the left of the dealer clockwise. So before cards are even dealt, there's usually forced bets. So normally it's the small blind and the big blind to the left and the left of the dealer blind. And that's to like force the action, because if there were no forced bets like that, then no one would ever have any incentive to put money into the pot, because there's nothing to win yet. So you have forced bets that travel around, because this moves clockwise after every hand. So everyone gets hit with the big and small blinds eventually. And then there's kind of special words for areas. So like you call this early position, because after, as the action goes around, these are the first people to act. Then you have mid position, like the middle people to act, and then late position. And they all have kind of different implications, which we'll get into. Go for it.
So when it comes to the round of betting, there's 4 different things that you can do. You can either bet, so you're putting money in, say, if you want to keep in the hand, you need to put in this many chips, which is a call. And then there's a raise, which is when you think you have a better hand than the person that bet, so you raise, well, you think, maybe, you probably do. So you put in twice as many chips as the original bet. Or more. And then, of course, there's fold, in which you just throw your cards in the middle and say, that hand is disgusting.
Okay, so those are like the rules. Like that's how you play. Like it's like knowing how all the pieces in chess move, but you don't actually know how to play chess. So how do you actually play and be profitable and win? Oh, great. It says math. It should say math. So it's all about math and statistics and stuff like that. Okay, so say you're playing Texas Hold'em and you look down at your 2 cards and you see 2 aces and you're like, I'm gonna win, right? Because you have the best hand. You guaranteed, for sure, have the best hand. So it turns out you're not always gonna win. In fact, you win at best. The best case scenario for you is you will win 85% of the time. When you look down at pocket aces with just 1 opponent, you have an 85% chance to win. So when that 15% comes up, there's a lot of people who'll be like, oh, I lost with aces, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's not the right mindset, because you're not going to win all the time. 85% is not 100%. And then when you have more people in the hand, like if there are 3 other hands, you're only at a 63% chance of winning, like at the beginning, like before any of the other cards come out. And that doesn't, so if you know that there are 3 other people in the hand and you have the option of like calling or raising, and you're thinking, well, there's only a 63% chance that I win, do I really want to put all my chips in the pot? The answer is yes. You don't ever want to fold or call or anything. If you have aces, you want to get as much money in the pot as possible before any other cards are shown, because you know as an absolute certainty that you have the best hand, or at the very least, you're tied with someone else for the best hand. So here's some, okay, so this is a tool that you can use to calculate poker statistics. I think we probably have a link to it at the end or something. But anyway, these are some like standard hands that you start with. So like if you have ace king with 2 other opponents, you're at about 50% chance to win. 2 5s, you're at a 40% chance. Is there any of these where you're not a favorite?
Deuces.
Okay, deuces, yeah, that makes sense.
So if you have 2s, you're only going to win 30% of the time against 2 other players.
Yeah.
And even with an ace and a 2, it's still
About even.
kind of close.
Yeah, so the point is like the percentages usually are pretty close. So in order to kind of give yourself an edge, that's where like all the betting strategy comes in. Because if it was just, if there was no betting and you just dealt out cards and then flipped the, you have a question?
Yeah. So are the percentages for like professionals or novices, or where are the numbers coming from?
So this is pure statistics. This is
Okay, so
like
at
there's
the
no
they
betting
can
right
find-
now. There's no skill at this point. Just pure
Okay.
statistics.
Okay.
So
Like
it's- everybody just checks. The whole
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, if there was no betting at all, right? This is run over. These are only like hundreds of thousands of simulations, but if you go back, like some of the, it runs like 10 billion simulations and stuff like that. So
By no betting, you just mean that you would have the best hand that shows these percentages.
yeah. So if this is your hand before the community cards are dealt, this is the number of times you would win at showdown at the end. Yeah. Okay, so taking into account those percentages, of which there are a ton, what tells you how much to bet, or whether you should call a certain size bet, or like how much you should raise to try to get someone to fold or get them to call? And it turns out it's all about what you have to risk in order to win how much, and you call that pot odds. So you actually got a pretty good illustration. Okay, here you can do this.
Okay, so in this example, I was raised and I have Jack 4 suited. So in order for me to stay in the hand, I have to call just under 400 chips to win 895. So when you do the math, that's like 2 to 1.
Yeah, it's like half and half, 44% pot odds. And it turns out, okay, go back real quick. So what you're thinking now, after you kind of do these odds in your head, and you're thinking, okay, 44% pot odds right now, which means you're getting a better than 2 to 1 return on your money, because you're putting in 400 to win almost 900. And what you're thinking now is, do I win this hand more than 44% of the time? And it turns out this one is kind of close, because like that's obviously not a great hand.
But it's suited.
Okay. So, fun fact: 2 cards being suited makes them look prettier, but it only adds about 3% to the equity of the hand. So don't fall slave to the suited thing. It's a myth.
So in a different hand here.
Okay, yeah.
So this one is kind of interesting. So we have to call 50 chips with.
Actually, wait, real quick. Is there anyone that's lost right now, or is it pretty easy to follow? Okay, like lost and has a specific question that we could catch you up with. Okay, cool.
So in this case, I have the hand 9-2 suited, and I have to risk 50 chips to win 450 chips. So when you do the math, that's about 9 to 1.
Yeah.
So 11%
So the
of the
question is
time-
like, should you fold? And the answer is overwhelmingly no.
No.
Never, ever, ever. I don't care if you have 2 Uno cards right here. You don't ever fold, because you're getting 9 to 1, and you're never, ever, ever a 9 to 1 underdog. So when you're putting that extra 50 chips in play, it's always a profitable play. In the long run, that will always win you money rather than lose you money.
Yep.
So in the worst case, if he has the best hand possible, if he has aces, you're still at 16%, which is better than 11%. So mathematically, you have to call this.
Yeah.
What's this
Oh, this one's interesting. So, so this is kind of showing that. So pre-flop, I need to call 60 chips to win 100 chips, right? And it turns out that it's not the best, but since there's only one other opponent there, you might as well call and see what the flop is. So in this case, so this is the flop. So if you notice, right now I have a flush draw, so I have 4 cards to flush, and there's 160 chips in the middle. So it turns out with this, so if I have this hand, and if my opponent has literally any hand, I win 50% of the time. So in this case, I bet half the pot, 50% of the chips.
Now here is an interesting thing. So what's the position that this puts him in? He only has to call 80 to win 240.
Yes.
Right. So he's getting 3 to 1. I would have bet more, but that's just me.
That's fine. And then
good for you.
yeah, I actually got it. So, so then the rip or the turn was checked. So that's kind of telling me that yes.
I have a question. So if you're, the amount you're adding in the pockets, based on your odds of your cards, isn't that giving a piece of information over to your opponent?
Not always. We'll get to that.
Okay.
So in this case, so the turn was checked, right? So that means both of us just didn't put any money in the pot, and then came the river, which was a 9, which gave me my flush. So in this case, I know I probably have the best hand. The odds say 97% of the time I have the best hand. So any 2 spades in his hand, with one of them higher than a 7, he'll get it. So in this case, this is a little bit more strategy where I want to get more of his chips in. So what I do is I bet really small. So I bet 20 chips. So he's either going to call if he has any of these pairs, or raise if he thinks he has better hand than me, which since I bet so small, it's kind of likely. So he called, and I won. So he had a pair of aces, and actually he had 2 pair, aces and 5s. So I probably could have bet more at the river, but putting in that little bit is kind of like you're trying to like steal the pot, right? So that was the min bet at the time.
It makes sense now to talk about so when you are raising, how much do you want to raise or bet? You have to ask yourself. So when you raise or bet, your goal is to get better hands than you to fold and to get worse hands than you to call. So you want people to put money in when they have a worse hand, which would be them making a mistake. Like say for example, you played this game, but instead of all the cards being face down, all the cards were face up. You know everything. You know exactly what other people have. You would never make a mistake because you can see their cards. You have all the information available, right? So, but when they can't see your cards, you want them to make plays that are not profitable for them. So when they have worse hands than you, for example, right here, like he had a worse hand, but he still put money in the pot, which is great. You want to get the most value from it. But you have to kind of think. This is where being able to kind of read your opponent and guess as best you can at what they have plays to your favor. Because like Matt said, he probably could have gotten more money out of this guy because he has a great hand. He probably would have called 100 or 150 or something, right? Which would have just been more money that Matt could have extracted from him. But I guess you didn't put him on such a strong hand, right?
No.
If you checked the turn, it's kind of weird. It makes sense. I mean, yeah, which no.
If you had Queen 10.
Queen 10, yeah.
Yeah.
But if he did have a straight, and if you knew he had a straight somehow, you would be like, okay, I can get more money out of this guy because he has a better hand, right? So when you're trying to get better hands to fold and worse hands to call, you have to think about what kind of odds you're giving them. So for example, when you bet 80 into a pot of 160, it gave him what, 3 to 1 odds to call.
Yep.
And how many hands are going to call that have better than 3 to 1 odds to win? A lot of them, right? So if you bet 150 or something, it would have lessened. But the thing is, you couldn't have known he had such a good hand up front, right? He was going to call whatever you did. You could have shoved it, he would have called.
Exactly.
Yeah, so this is an interesting case, but basically the goal is get your money in when you're ahead, get better hands than you to fold, get worse hands than you to call, right? That's poker, basically.
So I forget what this example was. Yes, this one This one's interesting. So this is against one other person, and I'm the dealer. So I'm first to act in this situation. So because I have a king in my hand, so potentially a king high hand, I decide to raise. And if he has like 7 deuce, he's probably gonna fold, right? So he needs to have some kind of hand, and then we'll reevaluate on the flop. So flop came out this 4-9-9, and he bet 60 chips. So now this is a situation where you have to kind of think about what could your opponent have. So in this case, your opponent could have an ace because there's only 4 nines in the deck. There's only 4 fours in the deck, and 2 of the 9s are on the board, and 1 of the 4s is on the board, and it's against only one other person. So there's a grand total of 2, 4, 6, 7 cards that were dealt. So what's the probability that he has either a 9 or a 4?
Pretty low.
Pretty low, yeah, not super high. So he bet half the pot. All right, so 60 and 120. So now I'm getting 3-1 odds if I call. So in this case, I ran the calculations with what he had, and I was actually 46% favorite to win, which is lower than him, but it's greater than 33%. So
Which is the pot odds.
yes, which is pot odds. So I call. In this case, 3 came on the turn, which now gives me 2 pairs since I have a 3. So 2 3s, 2 9s with a king. So right now I have a very good hand. Again, he just bets 60 chips in there, and so I happily call him. And then on the river was a 10, and we checked it down. Right, so that means that we both checked. So in this case, I was ahead of him the entire time, since he had there were 2 pair with a queen, and I had the king. So this was one of those interesting circumstances where the turn helped both of us, and I probably could have got more money out of him.
Hold on, can you get back real quick?
Yep.
So obviously, if you're sitting across from one person and there's 2 9s on the board and they're like betting at you, you think like the thought crosses your mind like, okay, if they have a 9, I'm basically drawing dead, right?
Yep.
There's no cards that will come out that can help me really, unless it's king, which is like a super small percent chance. So, but the fact there are 2 9s on the board makes it much less likely that he has a 9. So it's something you have to think about. Like you can't always be like, I know when I started playing, I was always like, I gave people like the biggest benefit of the doubt, like, okay, he probably has like, the perfect hand right here or something. But that is so rarely the case that it's really important to like break yourself in that mindset and think like even when these 3 cards came out and you only have king 3, like there's a good chance that you have the best hand, even then, unless he has an ace or like, like a king with a better kicker or something. But what was it like? It was actually 47%, right?
Mm-hmm.
But still, I mean, half and half. Like you could have the best hand even though you hit nothing. Yeah. So.
And the only reason that he had the best hand on the flop was because there was a heart on the board. For whatever reason, that just means since he has 3 hearts, so 3 to a flush, he had a marginally better hand on the flop.
Yeah. So like a lot of times you'll have 3 to a flush and you'll think, okay, it could come heart. So the chances of it coming heart is 4%, right? If you have 4 hearts on the flop, the chance of you hitting your flush is like 19%. So you have to, those are numbers that, you should just know. You shouldn't have to calculate. That's like memorizing. Like what the odds are of hitting a pair or a flush or a straight, given what's on the board and how many cards there are to come.
So one of the very common things that new players do is they look at a chart like this, which kind of shows you the hands that you should play. Right? So if you have unsuited cards, it says in any position, you instantly play these cards. In mid position, you play these. Late, you play these. And then unplayable hands, all these. But it turns out that even all these that you shouldn't play, you can still win a hand with them.
That
It's
is
just-
so wrong. I've never seen that chart. It is so wrong.
It is terribly wrong, and you should never look at this chart ever except for the time that is here.
Where can I find this?
Don't
Don't look for it. Don't look
You're
for
wrong.
it.
You're wrong. Like for example, it says that if you have 2 2s, 2 3s, or 2 4s, that you should only play it in late position. That's wrong. Like you have a pair already. You probably have the best hand. So if you see this, just don't even look at it.
Yeah, it's interesting to know that if you have pocket twos, you are a favorite against any other cards that aren't a pair. Like
Yeah.
if someone has ace king and you have pocket twos, you're ahead because ace king isn't a pair and 2 2s is a pair.
So let's talk about bluffing. So bluffing is when you bet and you don't have the best hand. You have probably the worst hand. But you think that your opponent doesn't have a good hand. And they are putting you on either like having a pair, flush, straight, what have you. So in this case right here is called a semi-bluff, where we both checked every street, so flop, turn, and river, and then I just put out a bet on the river. In this case, if my opponent has a queen, a king, or a 10, or an ace jack, or just a jack, I lose. So there's a lot of outs that he has, but since he checked the whole time, I just didn't put him on those cards. Otherwise, he would put money into the pot. So I was like, well, I'm going to put money in the pot. And instead of doing the strategy that I did before, which was kind of more of a trapping strategy where I just bet small, in this case I actually bet kind of big. So in this case, I'm trying to get my opponent to think I have a jack. And it worked. So I got the chips. So now,
Just go to it.
yeah, let's just show you guys a really sweet bluff.
So when you play on, there's a poker client called PokerStars. You guys probably heard of it. You can always like upload your hands from PokerStars to this Boom Player site, and it does like the whole replay. It's pretty cool.
And we'll talk more about the various tools and clients to play poker after this. So in this case, he has what's considered the worst starting hand in poker, which is 7-2. Since he was feeling a little frisky, he decides to raise. Is that a good play?
No.
No. But he's feeling a little frisky, so yeah, whatever. And then flop comes out this. And he bets.
Small. That's a small.
That's a very small bet. It's like a quarter of the pot. And he has 2 other callers. And then 8 comes out. So if his opponent has
He checked.
literally in this case he actually
That's
checks.
disgusting.
It's terrible. So he folds, and then he raises. Right, so then he calls. So right now, this guy probably has king, 5, or an ace. In this case, an 8. In this case, an 8 came on the river. So he just
that was
went
so
all
bad.
in. In this case, the bluff worked. But
Okay.
let's run.
So can we go back? Can we go back? Can we replay it, please? Just step by step. Just go step by step. Okay. Okay. So let's talk about the things that went wrong here. Okay, go. Wrong. Okay. Like stop. So if you did want to make some sort of saucy play here, which is fine depending on like how you know your opponents and like there's this idea of table image, which is like what other people think of you as a player, which is based on like how you've played and what plays you've made in the past, and especially when you go all the way to showdown, which this obviously didn't, so they never got to see his cards. But if it goes all the way to showdown and people see like, oh, he was bluffing the entire time, like that diminishes your table image, so people are more inclined to call you because they know you do stuff like that. So depending on your table image and stuff, if you had this image as like a bully and someone who only plays really good hands, you could probably get away with raising here, but you would have to make it like 400 or 450 because look at the odds these people are getting. Like they're never ever going to fold. Like right here, this guy is getting what, 9 to 1. So I mean,
Something like that,
he's
yeah.
not folding, right?
Yeah, so you know,
Okay, so fine. Okay, it comes out. What? He goes check, check,
yep, check, check.
and he bets tiny, which is giving this guy now 5-1 to call. Which I mean, everyone should call. No one should fold. Anyone that folds here made a mistake. Mistake. Okay. Now, this is my least favorite thing. Okay, so when you're bluffing, you have to tell like a credible story. Like the people have to think, you know what? Based on what he's done, he probably does have, like in this case, like ace king or like, you know, some sort of ace five or any five really.
And you have to remember too, this guy is in an early position, so chances are he has a relatively strong hand.
Yeah, the person most likely to have a king right now is that guy for sure. Because when you make a play, so at the very beginning there was small blind, big blind, and this guy raised, right, or called. He called. And when you make a play that early in position with all of these people left to act, which you don't know what they're gonna do, they haven't acted yet at all. Like that's a strong play because you're saying I'm not afraid of you guys raising me, or I don't care how many people call. Like I have a good hand. So this is a.
What if he's also bad at
Well,
He's not bluffing.
He wouldn't have checked.
He's only been calling.
If
Yeah.
he was. Yeah.
And but here's the thing I hate the most. Hit next. He checks. Like if you're saying I have a great hand and I have a better hand than all of you guys, why on earth would you check on the turn? It's like if you want people to think you have a good hand, you have to basically fire every street. Like you have to bet and bet big. Like this is I don't know how this works, but
And the dealer.
oh, that's
bets.
why it's a free roll.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
So you don't have to pay any money to get in this tournament. That's better.
That's why
Shitty.
everybody's.
Okay, so now he bets. Now, I'm very curious to know what this guy has. I would bet that he has like a weak king or like, you know, something that's good, but obviously he was able to be pushed off of it. So, and he folds, which is crazy. And then he doesn't even look at how small a raise that is. He has to call 550 to win 3,000. That's like just shy of 6-1.
So of course he calls. He has to.
But if he wants him to fold,
This is where he gets lucky though. The 8 right here saves him. So, kind of what I think the dealer thought was he has to have a 5 or an 8. And player 8 there does not have a king. Right, in this case. I think he has an ace or something. Yeah, so he shoves. This is only half the pot.
well, that's all he has.
That's all he has.
That's all he has.
That's all he has.
So that was,
Like he's getting such good odds.
and right now, notice he's playing the board. None like his cards don't even count toward his best hand. This is his best hand right now.
And yet, somehow,
It works.
the bluff works.
What a sad hand of poker that was.
It's pathetic,
That was bad.
but sometimes it works. If you get really lucky. Other times, you just lose a lot of chips.
So like this guy was not telling a credible story at all. Like I don't know what this guy was thinking. Like yeah, okay, never mind.
Turns out this is actually the bluff of the week.
Oh my
on
god,
PokerStars.
that's disgusting.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is okay.
This well, this is the hand that we just did.
Okay.
It's the bluff of the week.
Do you want can we just find another bluff that is actually a good one? Like you can just search for bluffs, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, you should be able to. Oh, this is just even names. Can you search by tag? Because you can tag things as like nice bluff. Oh, right here, right here. Okay. Do it.
This one. The guy's
I feel like this is
username.
the same thing.
The guy's. Oh shit! It's a fucking free roll again. Okay, yeah.
So like this, so people play like obviously you can't play on PokerStars in the United States because it's
Oh,
stupid.
here we go. Okay, so this time they're playing for real money.
Okay, perfect.
It's not a lot of money.
$2.20 by.
$2.20. But it's money.
Let's
So
see how this
he
plays
is
out.
the big blind. Oh, I think I know how this hand's gonna go. Interesting.
Okay, so he checks. Doesn't hit any of it. Checks. And then when checks. Start. If he checks, then
Bet.
okay. Raise. Okay. That is a good. That's a good bluff. That's a good bluff.
Fold.
Especially because this is so late in the tournament, probably. Like, yeah. So there's two ways that you can play poker. There's cash games and tournaments. Cash game is where you sit down with $100 and you bet dollars. Like, I mean, you sit down with 100 or 100,000, whatever, but you bet like money, like actual money. And when you win actual money, and you can stand up at any time and cash out and whatever. And then there's tournaments where everyone pays the same to get in, and you get like tournament chips, which have no cash value, but there are prizes for the top X finishers in the tournament. So this is a tournament where everyone's paid their $2.20 or whatever, and this is super late in the tournament. It's level 24, and they're probably like 8-minute levels or something. So it's been going for a while, and now they're in the money, but they don't want to get knocked out, because every time somebody else gets knocked out, their pay increases because they finish in a spot higher. So when you have as many chips as this guy has, you're able to put a ton of pressure on the people who have less chips that you could knock out if you beat them in that one hit, right? So that makes them less inclined to call. So that's actually a really good bluffing spot. I like that a lot. So let's see. There wasn't much room, huh?
What?
I was just gonna say there wasn't much room to tell like a credible story here, but it kind of makes sense. Like,
Well,
so
the credible story here is he has 2 cards.
yeah. So since can you start over?
Yep.
So since
Well, I'll just
he's
Bet.
on since he's the big blind, he doesn't have to put any extra money in to come into this pot, which means he could have literally any 2 cards. You have no idea, right? And then, so when it gets to him and you see like 6 and 5, like think about the hands he could have. He could very easily have 6 and 5, or pocket 6s, or pocket 5s, or like 5-6, or rather king 6. Like he
Literally
could easily
any-
have crushed this board.
Any hand.
If it came like ace, king, queen, and this guy bets, that's probably not credible, because if he had like ace, queen, he probably would have raised pre-flop, right? So yeah, that is a really good bluff, and his name is Bluff Cruel, so that's cool. Yeah. So bluffing is all about making sure that your opponents believe you, and like your actions telling a credible story, so someone doesn't just say that's bullshit, I call, you're lying. And all the examples we've shown are like online, and playing live is like a whole different beast, because online, how much information do you have? You have what you've seen of the player before, you have maybe how long it takes them to act, like how long they spend thinking, stuff like that. But live, you have like you can look at their face, you have like their eyes, their like hand movements, like how they shuffle their chips and stuff. It's like there's a lot more information you can get live versus online. So man, that's like a whole nother thing. I mean, playing live is a ton of fun, but
Online is also fun.
online is fun too. Yeah. I think that's pretty much it, right? Is there any other? I mean,
talk about the tools quick.
oh yeah, sure. Go
So-
to Pro Poker Tools. So notice we've only talked about no limit hold. Oh, didn't even talk about limits. So the most popular game of poker played in the world today is no limit Texas Hold'em, which means there's blinds, but when it comes to you, you can bet as much as you want, provided it's more than the minimum bet, which is normally the big blind. So at any point, you could just say, I bet everything. Like, you could be sitting with the Chinese billionaires in Macau playing for like $10 million and just be like, yeah, you know what, I bet $10 million. Like, whatever, that's fine. So there's also games that are pot limit, which means the most you can bet is the size of the pot. And the reason they do that is because there's game types like Omaha, which is where instead of 2 cards, you have 4 cards. And you have to play 2 cards from your hand and 3 from the board. So you can't just play like 1 card from your hand and 4 from the board. You have to play 2 and 3. But when you have 4 cards, the percentages of like who's gonna win are a lot closer than in Texas Hold'em. So, like for example, aces versus deuces is like 85 to 15 or whatever. But the highest spread of percentages of Omaha hands is probably like maybe 65, 30, 65, 35 or something. So when they say pot limit, it just kind of lessens the variation. So, things can swing bigger either way, so they want to limit the amount of money that could swing either way. I mean, it's not to say that people don't play No Limit Omaha. They do. They're crazy, but they do. So there's Hold'em, Omaha, and then there's games where actually my favorite game probably is Omaha High Low, which is where the high hand gets half the pot, which is like standard straight flushes, all that stuff. And then the low hand, which is the lowest 5 cards under an 8 that are unpaired, wins half the pot too. So like, it's a wild game. Like it takes forever to play it live because you have to like flip over the cards and figure out everything. But it's a whole nother like dimension that you don't think about when you're just playing Texas Hold'em High. It's a super fun game. But go to simulations. Okay, so this is super useful when after you've played and you're like kind of like if you want to get better, really what you have to do is like review your sessions, like play for like 2 hours, and then spend like 30 to 45 minutes like going back and looking at your hands and being like, yeah, I could have done this differently, or maybe I should have seen this, blah blah blah. So then tools like this help you out a lot, where you have to kind of figure out. I mean, you can't really do it in the hand any more than you can just like calculate odds in your head. But then you can come back to this and be like, what are the real percentages, and like, what mistakes did I make? Where could I have got more money out of people? Stuff like that. So
Yeah, so the syntax is very simple. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then T is for 10, and then J for Jack, Q for Queen, K, and then A for Ace. And then the suits are all lowercase, and it's the first letter of the suit. So the syntax is insanely easy. So if I have like Ace, King, and you don't have to supply the suit either, which is nice. And the other thing you can do too is you can also do like a percentage for the hand.
So like all the ones that we showed, it's like 100%, which just means any hand possible. Like you're not limiting the hand that it could be at.
Yep.
But here you could say like the top 5%. So this is saying how does Ace.
So this actually kind of refers to this chart a little bit when it gets to the percentages. So in this case, there's some calculation that was done to figure out the best hands that win X percent of the time.
Statistically, without counting betting at all.
Yes. Yep.
So against the top 5% of hands, your Ace King is ranks 45%.
Yeah.
Which whatever.
Yeah. So it tells you the percentage that you win, and then this is number of trials that ran, so number of hands that ran, and then the wins. And
So wait, can you put it to 100%? So how does Ace King rank against all the other hands? So if you're against one other hand and you're thinking like, okay, I'm a 65% favorite to win this hand. So that might be true without any betting. But say the betting goes, another person raises, you re-raise, they re-raise you. Then you're thinking, okay, they probably don't have like 7 dukes or whatever. So the more action and like the more you know about the person and how they've played and how they're playing this hand, like you have to think like these are all the things you have to keep in mind. Like, okay, he's probably not playing 100% of hands. Like, what is he playing? Maybe the top 10% of hands, 9% of hands at that point. In which case, your equity is no longer 65%. It's, so 57% against the top 10. It's wild. Like, I think the worst spot to be in is to have pocket kings and just 2 kings, and the action goes like raise, and you re-raise, and they raise you again, and then say you raise again, and then they shove all in, and you're like, well, shit. Like you just have aces, don't you? And in which case you're what, like an 85 to 15%? Okay, 82 to 18%. Fortunately, I had this happen in my favor one time when I had the aces, and that was a jolly old time. But it doesn't. I mean, yeah, it's like kings is a great hand. Obviously, it's like the second. It is the second best hand, right? But there's one hand that beats it, and that's aces. And when the action goes like that, and someone is so confident in their hand, I don't know, it's tough. It comes down to what you think of people. Like, statistics is good, and it will keep you making at least decent plays, or at least where you think, well, how bad could it be, right? But it really comes down to like knowing the people you're playing against, knowing how they play. Once you get, past where statistics is taking you. So yeah, I mean that's why there's a version of poker that they call limit, which is where you can't bet anything. There's distinct numbers that you can bet where it's like maybe you're playing. I played one of my favorite games to play was 5-10, like $5, $10 Omaha high low, which is where the first round of betting you can bet five. That's all. If you're gonna bet, it has to be $5, and then if you're gonna raise, it has to be in increments of five, stuff like that. And then like after cards come out, it goes up to like 10, 20. But that game was I think was broken like earlier this year. Like a computer simulator was able to play limit hold'em like optimally. Like you couldn't beat it at all.
Yeah.
But it will be a long time before no limit hold'em is broken like that because the betting strategy and stuff like that is just too overwhelmingly. I mean, there's just too many possibilities. So it's called the Cadillac of poker. No limit Texas Hold'em. Best game.
Best game. Best.
Best game.
Best.
Badoogi's the best game always. So yeah, there's also like fun things like tournaments will be called like 8-game, where it's like you play 8 different variations of poker that go up every time the blinds go up, stuff like that. Those are actually a ton of fun too. But yeah. I guess are there any questions?
So if my interest in poker moves on from hobby to fiction, which way will it help?
A casino.
You
Do
should.
you memorize all the statistics like before you play? Do you like pull your phone out and like?
Then if you're
No.
addicted, you can go here
Oh yeah, you
tonight at 10 p.m.
Oh dude, do you want to go?
No, I have to like book over to McGregor's.
McGregor's.
Yeah, for a single contest.
Okay. Okay.
Hey, my sponsors are paying.
Okay. So no, you don't memorize all the statistics. It's more like there are some statistics you want to memorize, like basically how your hand ranks up. Like I would put them into classes of like top 5%, 10%, 20%, and just kind of memorize the statistics there. And then there's also things like one thing that would get people into trouble is like if you're sitting with 2 hearts and there's 2 hearts on the flop. And you're thinking, I only need 1 more heart, and I'll have a flush, and I'll probably have the best hand. And really, it's like the chances of you getting the flush is only like 19%. So that's something you memorize because that affects how. I mean, it affects how you bet. Like okay, there's a 20% chance of me getting the flush and probably winning. How what are the chances of me winning without getting the flush? Maybe low.
Let's get. Let's put on ace or ace 10.
Yeah, so it's 50-50, right?
It's so sometimes if
But
your
that's
opponent has a pair, so there's no pairs here. So let's give him a pair.
it's gonna drop to like 35.
Yeah. Yeah. So in
I don't
this
know.
case, if they have a pair, and you have a 4 to a flush, so flush draw, you're still behind by quite a bit.
People get in trouble because they chase flushes and chase straights and stuff, but this like you don't really memorize the statistics. You just kind of get an idea for them, basically. I mean, unfortunately, there are when people play online, people have written software tools like heads-up displays to go over the poker client to show you like what percent you're at and like calculate pot odds for you, which I think is kind of shitty. And I much prefer playing live just for that reason mostly. But yeah, you don't memorize them all. You just memorize like I would say equivalence classes.
Mm.
So would you say like becoming very good at poker is a lot of playing? Is it a lot of researching? Or is it like a mix of both? Or
It's
what-
like probably 50-50. Like I would say in order to be like one of the professionals, I mean not only do you have to have, money to start up with, but you have to spend about like all the professionals when they talk about how they got into it, it's always like I would play 12-hour sessions and then I would go home with one of my other poker playing friends and we would spend 10 hours analyzing the session, stuff like that. So it's when you say research, it's not really like reading books or anything. It's more just like, retrospective, like what you did, what you could do better, stuff like that. And they never, like the professionals never do it alone either. Like it's always like 2 people that want to become professionals that like work together, So, yeah. 50-50, I would say. Any other questions? Nobody asks, how much have you made? How much have you lost? I'm not going to tell you anyway. It's not a positive figure.
What's the
Huh?
That's what's that.
It's rap, dude. It's rap. That's all it is.
How much do you wish it was?
I don't know. A lot. That'd be great. No, but that doesn't mean. I mean, the thing is, you can swing either way in poker. Like, you know, there are the professionals that have made tens of millions of dollars playing, even just online. But then you'll read, you know, an article where it's like, oh, you know, there's this one guy named Isildur. He's like some Swedish pro that like came out of nowhere and made like $20 million in a week. And then, you know, maybe a couple months later, it was like, oh, Isildur loses $1.5 million last night or something. And it doesn't mean that, you know, he's a bad player. It's just, you get their swings. They call it variance. AKA, there is still technically a little gambling in poker. Any other questions? If you're interested at all in like playing and watching, I would recommend do it. Oh no, not this. I mean, this is fun.
This too. If you're
There is like a free poker league
in Rochester.
which is a lot of fun. They play at bars and stuff. But I'm gonna say Jake Carver. Dude.
Oh, Jake Harper.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips on strategic poker?
Yeah. So if you want to make people angry, go to a poker table and put your hood up and wear sunglasses and put your earbuds in, and then like fold every hand. So this is like there recently, like over the past year, there's been a huge like surge of people playing poker on Twitch, which has been super cool. Like this guy Jason Somerville, he's like a poker pro. He's won like millions of dollars and stuff. But he has this really cool community where he just plays poker like 6 hours a day probably. There have been stretches of like 90 days where he just plays straight 90 days, and it's really cool because he is a professional, but he will like sit there and explain his thought process and like what's going through his head when he makes certain moves and stuff like that. It's a lot of fun. I mean, yeah, it's even people who don't like poker that much will watch this guy just because he's awesome. But if you wanted to get into it more, this is a really good place to start. It's like it's a learning thing.
In his Mario pajamas, he was full pro back in the day. He got a pro sponsorship.
Yeah, he plays like crazy. He plays like so like I was saying, you can't play on PokerStars, which is probably the biggest poker client out there. You can't play it in the United States. I think there are 3 places you can't play it: the United States, North Korea, and like Iraq, I think. Yeah. So the United States is on the same level as North Korea and Iraq when it comes to online poker.
Yep. So you can't go here. Well, luckily, PokerStars has fake money, so you can.
Wait, can we look at some people playing real money? So these people are playing $200, $400 no limit hold.
That guy's sitting out. That guy's sitting out. That guy's sitting out.
No one's actually playing right now.
No one's actually.
But people sit here with like $60,000-$70,000 to play. This one's not that big. There's still like a couple thousand, but like people play for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like,
So these guys, that's 20 actual American dollars.
Yeah, and these are we're just observing. Like these are people playing right now.
Yeah.
But we can't do this because America's the land of the free. So. But there are actually online places where you can play for real money. It's just a little shadier. But
and we're not going to discuss this in this talk.
Sounds like you need America.
No, America's great too. It is.
But you can play online poker in Nevada and New Jersey, but you can only play with people that live in that state.
It sucks.
But you don't only talk to people from
Anyway,
Internet.
if there are no more
I only
questions,
Jersey.
yeah.
Just to be kind of more specific, because while not doing final projects, I rewatched all of High Stakes Poker, at least the seasons of Gabe Kaplan. I see YouTube comments, which I can't entirely believe, because I do a lot of like popular posts in there, go broke. I think I heard that like Tom Dwan doesn't play anymore. He's like
So he
super in the red, I think.
so Tom Dwan is a guy that played online under the name Dur, and people call him Dur, like even at the table. And he made like $10 million in like a week or something, and lost a little bit. Yeah, I think he's up. But what happened with him was he had a downswing online, but the rumor has it that he's in Macau playing massive cash games. So he definitely doesn't not play poker anymore.
All right.
You're not just that good and then you stop. He's just off the grid. So I keep saying Macau. That's like the Vegas of China, basically. And people just I mean, there's all these like Chinese billionaire businessmen that play for like just unbelievable sums of money over there. Yeah, it's
And even in America, you can play for unbelievable sums of money in tournaments.
Yeah.
Like their tournaments where the buy-in is $100,000
or $1 million.
or $1 million. $1
Now-
million that you're not guaranteed to get back.
So when you see people playing like $1 million buy-ins, chances are they didn't pay for the whole thing themselves. Because what poker players will do at that level is they'll sell parts of themselves. So maybe they'll put up $300,000 and then they'll let people invest in them. Like they'll get 7 friends to each put in $100,000, and they all get a seventh of, or a tenth of whatever they end up winning, stuff like that. So that happens a lot. In fact, there are some pros who don't even pay their own buy-ins anymore. They just let other people pay and they take a cut or something, which is pretty cool.
Can you just really count cards?
That's blackjack, dude.
Okay, cool.
Are there any of those like public investing, or is it usually just like professional players?
No, there actually are.
It's like their friends.
It's usually just like their poker friends, but there are groups that have formed that like together back, like basically their investment strategy is investing in poker
So they're
players.
venture capitalists.
A lot riskier than venture capitalism, I'd say, but yeah. All right, thanks guys.
Thank you.